Hi guys, welcome to Amy's Cooking. Today I will be sharing with you another dessert recipe. If you haven't had these coconut steamed rice cake, you must try. They are very colorful, very delicious, very fun to eat. I remember growing up eating this recipe all the time, and actually this is one of my husband's favorite dessert. Why? Because it does come with a coconut cream drizzle that he just loves so much. Alright guys, let's get to it. Now, if you've seen my previous videos, you will know I usually pre-measure everything before I record. However, a lot of people don't have scales, and when I give measurements in cups and spoons, it doesn't really come out exactly. So I want to share with you as I'm going through this recipe exactly how I measure so you can replicate it. I really do hope that your recipe, your product will come out as similar as mine, and by doing this, hopefully it can be as accurate as possible. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Why am I proofing my instant yeast? I'm just going through this process so that if some of you are not using instant yeast, that you don't miss this, because the liquid that I'm adding here is going to be part of the whole measurement. So what I've done is added the sugar, the yeast, and the water, and it is warm water that we're using. We're going to mix it all up, and we're just going to cover it plastic wraps and set it aside until it's ready to be added to our batter. Next up, we'll be making the coconut solution that we will add to the batter later. For this coconut solution, we will need 1 cup of warm water all the way to the rim, and also half of a cup of coconut cream. So this is coconut cream, not coconut milk. I like this brand particularly because it's a lot thicker and it just has a lot more flavor to it. We will also be using confectioner sugar or powdered sugar. I have done my recipe using regular sugar and also the confectioner sugar, and I find that with the confectioner sugar, my batter rises a lot quicker, and when I bake or steam the cake, it's just a lot fuller. And the confectioner sugar does have the cornstarch in there, so that does help kind of make your steam cake a lot more softer. So you can see here I am packing the powdered sugar and leveling it as I am packing. So that will give you a full cup. It's approximately around 135 grams. And to this, we will also add an additional 3 tablespoons packed full of powdered sugar as well. So this is going to give you just the amount of sweetness for this recipe. We will also need half of a teaspoon of salt. I always add a little bit of salt to all my sweet recipes to kind of balance out the sweetness. Now remember that cup of water that we measured in the very beginning? I am removing 4 tablespoons of that water, and it is warm water. We will be using 4 tablespoons for the coconut solution, and the rest of that water that's left, we will be mixing it together with the flour later for our batter. So all we're doing here is just adding all of our ingredients so that we can cook the solution. And here is the half cup of coconut milk. The half teaspoon of salt, a 1 full cup of confectioner sugar, along with the extra 3 tablespoons of the confectioner sugar. Now take this entire mixture and we're going to warm it on high heat. I just want to warm the coconut milk up and dissolve the confectioner sugar. We do not want to steam it. We do not want it to boil. Just enough that when you touch your finger in the solution, you feel the warmthness, but you're not jerking the finger away because it's too hot. So these are the flours we will be using for our recipe. We're going to use the rice flour, the tapioca starch, and a little bit of baking powder. Okay, so when we measure our flours, we are going to loosely pour the flour into the cup and we will level it loosely. We're going to need 2 cups of this, and it's going to give us approximately around 190 to 200 grams of rice flour. Now we're going to add this into a mixing bowl and we're going to repeat the same process for an additional cup. Alright, we're going to do the same thing for the tapioca starch. We're going to need a total of 2 tablespoons. Just loosely pour and loosely level. Now with the tapioca starch, it will give a little chewiness to the texture of the rice cake. If you would like it to be more chewy, you can add an additional 1 to 2 tablespoons of the tapioca starch and you can measure it the same way. But whatever amount that you're adding in addition to what I'm using today, just make sure that you remove the same amount of rice flour. And now we're going to need a total of 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Alright, let's add the baking powder to the mixing bowl. We will be using a paddle attachment today to make the batter. Now this is the water that's left over after we remove the 4 tablespoons for the coconut solution. We're going to add it all here along with the yeast mixture that we proofed. It's always good to just proof yeast because you never know if you have some that's expired. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and mix or actually stir this for about 30 seconds. And then after that, we'll increase the speed to number 2 and we're going to mix it for 10 minutes. So this mixing process really does help to incorporate a lot of air, which is going to help your yeast ferment a lot better. Now once you are at the end of the 10 minutes, you just want to scrape down the sides of the bowl. And then we'll also add in the coconut solution, the warm coconut solution that we made earlier. Once you've added the coconut solution, you want to go ahead and mix it again for about 30 seconds, just until everything is fully incorporated and everything has mixed well. And then after that, we're going to stop, remove the bowl, and add the whole solution to a container. And just make sure that you have a container that has a lid, because remember that yeast really thrive in environments where there's no oxygen. So the tighter it's sealed, the better the yeast is going to do its job. We're going to go ahead and let this batter rest for 3 hours. Make sure you set a timer. And we want to preheat the oven to 175 degrees for only 1 to 2 minutes, and then turn the oven off and put the container inside. It helps when it's warm for the yeast to work better. Now while the batter is resting, we're going to make a coconut drizzle. So what we're going to do is add 1 cup of that same coconut cream and 1/4 teaspoon of salt, along with 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar. We will also need a thickening agent, which is a combination of 1.5 teaspoons of tapioca flour and 2 teaspoons of water. You're going to mix everything on high heat, and this is really important. As soon as you see tracks when you're whisking the solution, remove it from the heat right away. Just let it cool completely before you serve it. Now, you want to oil your mold very well. And these are little mini bowls that I purchased online, and I have a link in my description box if you're interested, along with all of the exact measurements for today's recipe. So here's our batter after 3 hours. Can you see all of those bubbles in there? That is from the yeast and its fermentation. So this is what is going to give you the classic honeycomb texture inside our steam cake, and it will also help the batter bloom or blossom very nicely, these little cracks that are characteristics of these steam cakes. Take that batter and divide it into 2 equal portions. We do want to add a little bit of color because, again, like I mentioned earlier, this is a very fun and colorful dessert. Here I'm adding a little bit of pandan extract to 1 bowl. and just a tiny drop of pink to the other. Trust me, you don't need a lot. The color is going to be very, very pronounced when we steam the cake. As you can see here, this pink is very, very light, but trust me, the color will come out very nicely. So you want to give it a very well mix as for both. I'm also doing an additional batch that is off camera, that I will leave half white and the other half I'm gonna make blue, just so that we have a variety of different colors. So for the steamer, you want to steam it on high heat. You want your steamer to be on full heat before you add in your molds. Now you also want to let these little bowls heat up really well before you add in the batter. By doing so, again, you will get more honeycomb texture, and also when the batter blooms, it will have these very nice petals on top. Now they don't need to be steamed very long. These are pretty small bowls, so depending on which sizing you use, you may need a little bit longer. For these that I'm using, I only need about between 9 to 11 minutes. So once you've left the bowl in there for about 3 minutes, remove the lid and begin pouring in your batter. You want to pour the batter all the way to the top with just a couple of maybe like half a centimeters left, so that it will be able to rise nicely and it will give it a very good height to your cake. When you're steaming the cake, just make sure that you're removing the lids every 2 to 3 minutes so that you can wipe down the steam. That way it doesn't fall onto your cake and make your cake soggy. Can you see how beautiful the cake has risen? Look at these beautiful petals. This is what I'm referring to when I talk about the little crack on top and these little petals. They are actually the characteristic of these steam cakes. Now if you stick a toothpick in there and there's no uncooked batter, it's ready to go. Just let it rest for about a minute or two and then you can remove them. Oh my gosh, look at how beautiful they are. Look at these little petals, these little crack on tops. I love the way it looks, and the color just came out perfect, just a perfect amount of color that we used. All right, here's my blue one. I'm gonna remove one. Look at how tall it's risen and how nicely evenly they're cracked on top. All right, they're a little jiggly. They're very, very soft. The inside is filled with all these little air pockets, and that's from the 3 hours of fermentation that we left. All right, and see these little honeycombs in there? They are just so gorgeous to look at, so fun, so playful. All right, so you cannot eat these things without the coconut cream drizzle, okay? That little balance of sweetness and a little bit of salt that we added to it just makes this even more wonderful. Okay guys, give this recipe a try. I hope you liked the video. Give me a thumbs up and also don't forget to subscribe. And until next time, enjoy.